Howdy of you delicious people, I'm here to review Death Note from 2006. A movie that became a anime series. And I know a lot of people within Death Note, they have their certain preference that if anything, a lot of people would go on and say, yeah, I love the anime series. Oh my god, like, man, was that better than anything else that came out? And so on and so forth. Maybe certain people are to go on and actually like the films, regardless of eventually the more recent one to be a more Americanized version of Death Note. And a lot of people were to go on and have more negative things than positive things about that eventual remake. I am to go on and say what other Death Note is to be the one that really and truly interests people and are to really still have Death Note be an importance to people. I will go on and go out of my way to eventually check it out if it seems that that is important enough to people to justify its viewership of me going into that. But if anything, also like if this is to be my once and always or once and only attempt of talking about Death Note, then like I'm more than happy to go on and do so. So Death Note from 2006 is to go on and be, I think, a very creative film with its limitations. And to me, this is to honestly go on and feel very much like a superhero film, even though we don't have a guy going on and wearing spandex and actually legitimately uh, fighting crime, but is to be kind of a guy who is fighting crime without actually being uh, physically there to do so. And we would go on and have me probably compare this to stuff like Batman Begins or stuff like Moon Knight, as we have, like in Moon Knight, we have Mark Spector and we have Khonshu, whereas Death Note, we go on and we have Light and we have Ryuk here. So I would go on and need to explain to people that I myself had a physical copy of this film, and that's how I was able to have gone on and watched this movie via English dub. Every single bootleg app that I've gone on to be able to look into to try and find this movie dubbed in English, because I knew that there was a English version of this film. Every single app that I went into to try and find this movie, yeah, the movie did exist, but not dubbed in English. It was to go on and unfortunately be English subtitle. So if you yourself still want to go on and watch this movie, or maybe you even prefer the English subtitles, then I will go on and give you two apps to be able to see this movie, but again, it won't be dubbed in English. I'll give you two apps: Zelifonic, Zelivonic, or Moopzy, Moopzzi. These two apps here, you would go on and need a mobile device, and you would go on and need a Google Play Store to find these apps. And then once you do, you should be able to hopefully download these apps, be able to watch said Death Note if you choose to do so through this own means, or like I've already gone on to say, like logically, if you really want to go on and find an English dub of this movie, check out the film uh, in its physical media copy, because logically, this movie was good. Have watched it more than once now, and I am to go on and always enjoy it. I think that this movie is a good film, and I did really go on and uh, find it to be so interesting. I think the only negative that I can probably state about this film is I think they spend a lot of time with a lot of randos in this movie until you finally go on and get Light to finally get a character that is to be written in more of a way that actually is to have some kind of effect on Light. And like we even can go on and look at a movie like Spider-Man, where like Spider-Man would go on and face off against the common uh, bank robber or common criminal, up until the point where eventually we would have him go on and face off against like a Green Goblin or a Doctor Octopus or some character with actual real legitimate name value. And so there's always that kind of comparison also to a movie like this and another superhero like thing. So now let's go on and explain Death Note. So we would have a character who is to be Light, who eventually comes upon this blank notebook that has nothing written within it besides the explanation of the rules that are to apply with this Death Note. If once you are to go on and write a name in there, uh, eventually this person will go on and die defaultingly by a heart attack. But if you were to ever go on and feel quite so creative, you can go on and say exactly when this person dies, the leading up of how they die, and so on and so forth. To the point to where we are to go on and have Light further and further we realize in this movie are really controlling people's destinies and control what they're to kind of do with their day, to the point of us realizing that Light is very much playing God. So we would have Light that goes on and is to kill killers, but then eventually, the further and further we go into this film, it seems that what Light goes on and does is to feel more and more like self preservation. And eventually, we start to see some collateral damage happening within this movie that eventually is to make us realize that morality is to start slippering, is to be a very much more slippery slope. And by the end of the film, we would even go on and have Ryuk specifically even turn to Light and just see like, dang man, like you've really gone on and changed who you were to have gone on and been from the beginning of said film to now where you are now. And really, we also have like so many things that come into factor in this film. There is to be a strategy, there is to be a way of Light going on and definitively having the police who are to no longer think of him as a suspect, to where Light is to go on and perfectly make the police no longer have suspicions of him. And in some ways, uh, Death Note can also be comparisoned to things like Dexter, where Dexter is to go on and end up working for the police, and he is to, of course, go on and kill people and then throw them into uh, the water at the end of the day. But then eventually he will go on and even have himself, at a certain point, have his deaths be revealed to the public, and he will have to strategize and figure out a way to have people not exactly rule uh, him into going on and being eventually this murderer. But anyways, if you've never gone on and checked out Dexter, then there's a number of seasons. There's also a number of spin-offs, and logically, a lot of people will end up going on and getting upset at some point by the way that that all plays out. But either way, I'm here to say that I'm just talking about Death Note. So, Death Note goes on, and eventually, if we are to be given this character Light, we also have to go on and give his nemesis the proper name of L. L goes on and eventually is to be this genius person who is to seemingly be the person who is to be the betterment of solving these unsolvable cases and trying to narrow down who exactly this cure person could possibly be, because they always have to go on and they have to give a name to something. even if it seems that there is to be a worldwide uh, death that can go on and be occurring here, and having them assume that there could be no way that one person can pull this all off, as if this person is like Santa Claus, but still they are to go on and in their rational uh, of this whole occurrence realize that most of the deaths are happening in a very specific uh, place of origin. And so that leads Light to realize that if they're going to go on and find this Akira person, that they're going to be able to do it within the place that they are in right now. So we would go on and have eventually Light going against L, and when Light is to go on and find out a little bit of information about what they're doing with the Light case, or the Akira case, Light goes on and figures out a way to counter all of that, to kind of make L have even more suspicions of who exactly this person is, and about how there could quite possibly be a mole within uh, the uh, police precinct, because it seems that uh, the killer is figuring things out. So we would go on to also within this story find other characters that are to seem to not be throwaway like characters, and that becomes for a very much more interesting story to have them be playing with all of these characters. We have Light, who has a girlfriend named Shishori, and she will go on to play into the understanding of Light's origin, as well as also play into the third act. That will give us this definitive, like, man, like, things have really changed for this character. And then we also have Ray, who is to go on and uh, follow Light here. And it is kind of interesting how this person could have been quickly just a throwaway thing that they took a lot of time and investment in, and then eventually go on and not only give us Ray, but then Naomi in this film. We also have the Chief, who is working alongside L, and most of the time, this guy is to be just kind of very cold and really, like, you never really can go on and have a good feel of him. Where, like, yeah, he can go on and be a guy who uh, will state, hey, yeah, I get it, everybody, if you don't want to go on and continue to be a part of this case, because reasonably, how it seems that we may never go on and catch this guy, or it seems that your lives could go on and be in jeopardy because of being involved in this case. So it does seem like Chief at some point does have an amount of care, uh, but also it seems that again, uh, it's to reasonably be from an arm's length, even to the point of the Chief to have supposedly been um, not sleeping and just consistently working for the past 3 days, and reasonably, the chief is just kind of dealing with the stress of his own family, who is being surveillanced and watched over. And you can tell at some point how much this character does care, even though, again, like, it's very hard to completely uh, get that feeling, some kind of feelings away from this character. It's very difficult. The only real problem that I actually do honestly have with this film is I feel that they take way too much time of filler with the rando characters that just plop their way in to die in this movie. Um, and I wish that there was to go on and be just a little bit more story, um, than just the consistently build up of randos. But I get that there's only so much that they can go on and focus on at any given time in this film. But then also, like, I guess the more random thing could also make this much more so interesting than if this story was to go on and be from start to finish, be what it is. So, anyways, so and it probably can go on and even have that criticism be as a nitpick because again, I really did actually like this project. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just push my way into spoilers. I think there could be a number of other things that I can go on and state about this film, but I did go on and I did enjoy it. So, at the end of the day, I think it's about that time to say that we should probably just push on into spoilers. If anything, I'm gonna go on and try my damnedest to try to find the best possible future content that I'm gonna go on and put onto this channel. Uh, and I hope people will go on and find interest in what comes next. Because logically, I'm trying to put my best foot forward and trying to figure out what is best for the channel and most interesting for people. Even though logically there's a lot of choices that I've been making lately that it's like, what the is this? I'm just trying to find something very creative and something that I can sink my teeth into, even though eventually it is to go on and just be a project that's like, this is just fine, or this is just to be like, just like I wish there was something more there. Uh, but if anything, with this, like, I really wanted to go on and share my enjoyment of the Death Note bit of story here, regardless of how it actually used to just be the film and not the anime. If it seems that really people are overwhelmingly interested in me checking out the anime, if push comes to shove and I realize that Death Note, the animated series, is to be the bee's knees, that everybody is still to be overwhelmingly interested in, then I will go on and continue on my Death Note journey of anime series. But logically, if also this ends up being the one and done and I just kind of move on, because I am also to be a person of an enjoyment of variety, as well as also I just have in my brain just certain sets of projects that I want to go on and do in the future, then yeah, like that will end up being what it ends up being. So even though I was to go on and decide to do another project besides what I was going on and going to eventually uh, do, because I'm very just scatterbrained of what all I'm going to put out lately, because logically I don't know right now what is to be my best foot forward, um, to put onto this channel right now. I have no idea, and that is what is really just stressing me the out. And I am to go on and just be like, God dang it! Like, I don't know if I'm going to go on and be able to uh, take more of these days where I'm going to continue to just make so much research and not have it affect my day to day life. So, with that going on and said, my future reviews will go on and be stuff like The Escape Room from 2019, Cube, and a lot of those kind of very mystery kind of projects of sorts. But then also, I'm to still go on and look at uh, certain horror like projects and hope that I will go on and do them in the future. There were certain things that I'd gone on and even stated that I was going to review that I decided to go on against, just because I feel that the projects were to go on and be so small meat and potatoes, or to be a thing that I just didn't quite think were going to go anywhere, that I decided to finally scrap. There was even a project that I was to go on and fully watched the movie of, and I was like, should I really go on and even take the time to review this? And so there's a lot of hesitation just kind of going on, and second guessing what all I've been doing lately as far as titles that I've gone on to think that I should go on and check out at this point. So, with that said, let's go on and let's get into this title and let's talk and describe this whole entire film, scene for scene, via the cast list or wherever I am to go on and insist is to go on and help me to break down this entire film. For those of you, and I don't know if I've even said this already, I had gone on and had a physical copy of this movie. That's how I was to go on and be able to watch this film via the English dub. If you were to not go on and own a physical copy, then you could probably go through still apps to watch this movie via English subtitle and still get a gist of what's going on in the film. You can check out apps like Zelifonic, Zelivonic, or Moopzy, Moopzzi, to check out Death Note 2006 if you decide to do that venture. Maybe you are a person that likes English subtitles and not dub stuff because certain people have that specific preference. But if you want the English dubbed, you'll have to go on and you'll have to find a physical copy of this movie, which that I conveniently did, and was able to have watched it more than once now, and I enjoy it every time. So the investment could go on and be justifiably worth it to you. So, because I felt that it was, and I still have the physical copy of this movie. So, with that said, this movie was good. I really did like it and enjoy it. That is to be my final grade of this movie, but I think it's about that time to pause this here and whip out what I need to whip out to thoroughly explain this movie and the way of which that will go on and probably have a number of people jump off at this point. But I think and appreciate everybody who is going on and actually doing so. Right now, for me personally, I'm to go on and be very proud and to be very much a person that is like, well, hey, like whatever is to go on and be to my downfall, or is to go on and be to my own personal detriment of whatever one have you. Uh, like today, I'm to go on and be so proud of what I've accomplished upon this channel and what I've accomplished personally, uh, as really just far as like man, like all the stuff that I've been able to do through here, as well as also do physically in my own day to day, that I feel that I'm just like man, like I've really felt that I've accomplished a lot within the X number of time doing this, as well as also doing other things like doing um, fitness adventures, self improving myself. Even though there's a lot of times where just physically I'm to not look as attractive looking through the day to day of just the grind of this and what have you, or just the grind of also uh, trying to get workouts done and this, and taking that time away from this to do those adventures, and so on and so forth. So I'm to go on and say, like, you know what, like, if all of this goes to tomorrow or even today, then you know what, uh, like, I'm to be proud and happy that I at least got this far and that I can um, just kind of have that feather in my cap of like, man, like how have we gone on to just continue to do this for so long and maybe not get better, but just have continued to be able to just keep doing this. Is to just be um, just like, well, hey, at least um, I didn't give up. So with that said, let's go on and let's pause here and let's whip out what I need to whip out here. All right, so let's get into spoilers. It is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Oh, also let me know what is be your favorite movie that was to maybe once be an anime, or maybe a movie that became an anime, whichever. However, that was to go on and be broken down, could be whatever is to be your enjoyment. Let me know in the comments below what is to be also your favorite Death Note variation, because I'm sure it's probably the anime, but logically, maybe you two are also to have liked the manga, or the manga. However you were to go on and pronounce those books, logically that is to go on and be you. But without further ado, I think it's about that time to just rattle off this film. Uh, oh, also, for those of you that are to go on and have any interest in horror films, let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite horror film, because maybe at some point I may go on and check it out and review it, because logically, I need to put my best foot forward to try to find some interesting horror films that people will actually be interested in and will actually possibly have some name value. I know there is to be a lot of very much like, well, just find any slasher horror franchise and just go with that. Like, yeah, that could just be an easy thing, but if anything, um, I'm hoping also that people will go on and also be just creative. But if anything, um, logically, yeah, people can have all kinds of enjoyment of horror in their own rights. So logically, people can kind of bring up whatever. Either way, it goes on, and it helps me know that people exist out there, and it also helps me to know that people will have favorite horror projects that they are to go on and be looking into via this time of year. But anyways, let's push on into the beginning of this story. So we have a guy kind of running through the streets being chased by police. This guy, who I believe is to be named uh, Yusuke, is to eventually go on and to be grabbing this woman and holding her at gunpoint. We have these police officers that are trying to tell this guy to stop, don't, put down the gun. And then we end up getting the cliche of cliches when we go into the opening of a movie, where of course we go on and have a scenery shot of buildings. This is to be the one occurrence of which that I am to honestly just be much more okay with this visual occurring, because at least it is to go on and not be the setting of New York like a bajillion other films that are go on and give us like the same normal buildings that we've seen a bajillion times. And at least it's be taken from a certain culture, or we're going on and seeing this at least where I can just be okay with it. But if anything, the first thing we see is the death note upon the ground, and then we go on to see that light is opening up this death note and writing names within it. So the next thing we see after that is we go back to Yusuke. That is to still be going on holding this woman at gunpoint, and then all of a sudden he is to have a heart attack and fall over and die. The next thing we end up seeing is a foreign minister, a deputy director, who I believe is to have the name of Katsuya, who is to go on and be questioned about him receiving money from the mafia, and he is to, of course, be like, "Well, no comment. Like, I won't go on and I won't answer to any of this." And this guy, as he starts to make his way to his car, starts to grab his chest and then falls over and keels over and dies. We would then go on and be at the municipal court. We have a congressman's son who is to seemingly be released of all charges, and we have reporters that are going on and asking really if this guy is to actually be innocent, and they end up saying it's like, well, obviously he was falsely accused. And then all of a sudden, the son of this congressman goes on and begins to have these dizzy spells, falls over, and dies. We then would go on and have these newspapers that are going on and saying, another criminal dies. mysterious deaths, heart attack, and so many other statements. We would go on to have this reporter that behind him is having an ambulance just drive past him. And so we would go on to have this reporter who is going on and saying that these string of deaths are to be of heart attacks that are to have seemingly no history of these certain people who are coming into conflict with these heart attacks, have no history of illness within any of their families. So this is to be even more unusual. Of what is to actually be figuring out the connection of all this. So we would go on to have a security guard that is at a prison who is going on to be passing by all of these uh, prison cells. And we would go on to have these prisoners that are thrusting themselves against these windows of their cells because they are going on and foaming at the mouth and grabbing at their chest and dying. Killers found dead. And again, this is from the newspaper article that kind of got snippet here by me. So we were going to have reports that the Ministry of Health to say that the occurrences of these deaths are from some unknown pathogen. So reasonably, that is to go on and to be quite similar to COVID, where a lot of people were very misunderstood of where exactly this is all, uh, like the reason of its occurring. And so they're kind of just giving this blanket statement, just like, well, yeah, we don't know why this is going on, but it's just happening. Um, and so we follow up by a number of people who have their own personal opinions upon the thing that they're all eventually going on and dubbing Kira. We have certain people that are going on and saying that that God is punishing sinners, and we also go on to have a number of uh, of college students who are going on and saying how Kira is their savior, and that Kira is going on and killing criminals and having the world becoming a better place because of it, and so on and so forth. A lot of people go on and have their opinions about how uh, criminals deserve to die, but also how Kira is just another murderer. And there's text chains, there's people going on and having their opinions upon this news channel. And then the next thing we go on and we see is that there is a bit of news that is live going on. And Light is to conveniently be at this location that this TV is to show this news, and is to be mentioning a guy who is to be of age 45 who is Hiromishi, that is to seemingly be in great debt. So he's going on and performing an armed robbery where there is a number of hostages that are to be in his presence. We then would have Light who's to whip open his death note and write down that exact guy's name. And then we would come to find shortly thereafter that there is a number of hostages that are all just making their way out of this bank, to come to find that the man who is to perform this robbery had killed over and died. So the next thing we see here is Light going on in a gymnasium of sorts, a basketball court of indoors, to just be playing basketball with his friends. We would come to find that eventually this whole matchup is to go on and eventually get to a point of, I guess, the first to 40. So Light goes on and is beating his friends at basketball, and he ends up collecting this bit of money. We have Shishori that goes on and meets up with Light, and is to say it's like, man, you're going on and like you're getting this money the way you are, and it seems kind of shady, and like that doesn't look well for the future of possible your education here. That somebody will go on and probably find out, and you might kind of risk something here. But so why does it go on and say it's like, well, hey, like, you know what, like, if we go out together, then I'm paying. And Shishori's like, no, 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 no. Like, if anything, no, we're not going to go on and have you pay. If anything, I'm going to pay because we're celebrating. And Light is like, oh, what are we celebrating? And Shishori says to Light, it's like, well, we're celebrating the fact that you passed the bar exam. So the two of them make their way to this area, and Shishuri is stating to Light, it's like, well, hey, like I thought being district attorney would be something that I would have aspirations of, but it seems that you're going on, and and Light, you're accomplishing maybe even it before I do. And we again off the distance have people talking about the support of Kira, but also that Kira is ignoring people's civil rights, and there's a possibility that anyone could be falsely charged for any number of murders and heinous crimes of some kind. But so we have Light and we have Shishuri that are to overhear these people, and that of course goes on to have Light ends up asking Shishuri about what she feels specifically about this Kira guy. That Light goes on to state that he could be a god of the law, and we have Shishuri that is to go on and say it's like, well, hey, if anything, like Light, you yourself can go on and change things more than this Akira guy is going on and doing via the way that you're going to go into law and uh, be able to uh, and change the world for the better. And Light is to go on and say to Shishuri that it's like, well, yeah, but the laws that I'm going to go on and be practicing, they have their limitations. And Shishuri's like, well, doesn't everything? So Light is to go on and explain what he had learned while sifting his way through the criminal database. Light goes on and is to make his way into finding out that there seems to be a number of criminal cases via this criminal database where their cases have been dropped, unsolved, uh, and there is a number of criminals that are to be found wanting. And so Light was to go on and find out that a number of criminals were never captured for some reason, and that a lot of criminals are to have gone on and still to this day been free of any punishment. We would have at one point where Light is to turn to a guy named uh, Takuyo, and I might be ill pronouncing this because I think at some point in the movie they may have actually pronounced him um, Taokuyo. So if I'm ill pronouncing this, I'm just to say, hey, mistakes could be happening. But logically, this character is to be eventually a character that it's getting focused on, and I will repeat his name a lot more. So, regardless of my ill pronunciation of it, I apologize, but logically, I knew that I was going to ill pronounce something here. So, Shishuri used to go on and be shocked by the results that Light found, and Light is to even be shocked himself by all the things that he was to have gone on and found in this criminal database. We then go on and cue a month ago where Light physically himself had went to this nightclub, going on and eventually finding Takuyo talking to some friends about how he had basically gotten away with murder, and how Takuyo is to even mock and tease the victims and really mimic what they had gone on and stated, or the victims' families that have gone on and stated certain things about him. So when this guy gets ever so much louder and louder, we would go on and then have Light, who is to turn to this guy because he is overhearing him, kind of boast about him kind of getting away with murder here. Takuyo goes on and spot that Light has kind of turned his head the way he does. And so Takuyo goes on and makes his way to Light and is to seemingly get his knife ever so close to Light, and is to remember when he was to have gone on and sliced into somebody and taken out their heart, how it felt, and how reasonably at this point Takuyo is to say and do whatever he pleases because he realizes that there's no way that he's ever going to get convicted ever again of anything. So that he basically says no one can put him behind the bars. So Shishuri is to interrupt Light's story here and say that it was dangerous for him to go on and make his way to physically see this guy in the flesh. And Light is to go on and state that the only reason why he would go on and do such a thing is really just to see if uh, this person was to have been honestly wrongfully convicted by the uh, was to honestly be uh, wrongfully accused or anything of that nature. But this guy obviously is itching to kill again, so Light realizes that this guy should have been put away, and he wasn't. So we have Light that specifically for Shishori is to stop the story there, but then is to, via his own mind, or just for us, the viewer, kind of tell the rest of the tale. So Light goes on and takes his law book and thrusts it to the side, and then starts walking and finds the Death Note. Light is to go on and pick this thing up for how unusual it is and starts reading into it. The first thing that it goes on and says here, whoever's name is written into the notebook will die. Reasonably, like, we would go on to have Light that doesn't think that this is to be really taken of anything actually seriously, but then Light goes on and is to shift his head to the news, and there to go on and talk about uh, Konama, who it seems to be a guy who has gone on and stabbed and killed. So we would have, of course, Light, who is to put this guy's name into this notebook and see what happens. The following day, Light goes on and gets up for the morning as his sister and mother kind of going on and getting ready for their day. And we, of course, have Light that needs to go on and need his bit of breakfast before he goes and goes to school. We would go on to have Light that grabs the newspaper and is to go on and find that the guy that he had written in the notebook had died within the newspaper. And Light goes on and takes the newspaper and the notebook to double check if the name that he was to have gone on and put in the notebook is to be the same that matches the newspaper, and it does. Light's mother is going on and asking him if he is to, of course, go on and still want his breakfast, and then we cut to Light going on and making his way through town. We have at a point where there is to be a roadblock because there is a train that is making, or subway that is making its pass. So we have Light that goes on to look on the other side of this roadblock and notices Takuyo. Takuyo goes on and looks at his friends and like, hey, remember that guy? And so we have Light that goes on and is to have read a passage of how to use said death note. So this note will not take effect unless the writer has the person's face in their mind when writing his or her name. Therefore, people sharing the same name will not die by this effect. Like, if you go on and you put the name Phil in the death note, everyone who has ever been named Phil will not simultaneously die at the same time. No, it has to be a very specific person, and you have to not only get the name right, but you also have to get the face right. So, the further and further we are to go on and have Light, who eventually has certain people saying like, well, hey, I'm going by an alias, or hey, my name is to be L, and if you're going on and thinking that that these people will not have avatars to be able to speak through them, so that way they can go on and try to narrow down who exactly Light is, then anyways, that'll be how we'll kind of play out this story. But anyways, Light goes on and writes in his notebook this guy's specific name, and then we again go back to the rules. If the cause of death is written within 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen. But then it also goes on to state, if you don't write down the exact cause of death, by default, this person will just have a heart attack. If anything, if you write within the notebook, like how exactly you want this person to die on the exact day, the exact time, and so on, it really gets very specific about all this. And that ends up getting rather interesting how this was to all go on and play out further and further in the film, to where we would, of course, have Light that is to even write out names like a week beforehand for people who are going to die at very specific dates. So it'll kind of throw things off, because Light is planning things way ahead of time once it gets further and further to the film. Because again, we have to have Light who's to need to go on and throw suspicion of who he really is. So, and then Light will, or then L will go on and figure out that somehow this guy has the ability to manipulate time, and they'll go on and they'll explain that. So, let me adjust myself here. Anyways, we would have Light that is to go on and see within 40 seconds the falling down of Takuyo and him dying, and Light even further making his way to Takuyo's body to see him die, as Takuyo's friends is telling him to wake up or to get up, or to ask if he is okay. So Takuyo dies, and here is where Light is to go on and be having the notebook in hand, and the god of death is to appear in front of him. So we have Light that is to go on and see this character for the very first time, and of course he's to freak out justifiably. And we have Light who is to possibly come to the conclusion that this guy is coming for this book. And if anything, he's to be like, no, like this book is to be your own. Like you are in its possession, so I'm not going to try and take it away from you. If anything, yeah, go ahead and go on and keep this thing. If anything, I'm just going to appear to you because you now have this death note. And he goes on to further explain that that eventually this guy who is to be named Ryuk will be the only one that Light can go on and actually see because he has the pages and the book of the Death Note. If ever there is to go on and be a time where these pages or the book itself are to lend into anyone else's hands, they are to go on and to have seen uh, this god of death also. And we would also have Ryuk explain to Light that if at some point uh, this guy is to go on and give up the Death Note and is to throw it away or whichever, then he will no longer have any memory of the Death Note actually going on and to have any memory of him going on and doing any of this. So that can go on and be a thing of like, well, hey, if you want to keep killing people, go on and have this notebook. But if anything, I think right now this guy is to be the perfect uh, kind of person to go on and continue to do this and continue to get away with it. So, and that there is not going to be any price to pay for specifically uh, Light to pay against this guy because he's going on and doing this either. So, uh, we would go on to follow up here where these inspectors are all going on and talking to the chief. They're going on and realizing how these deaths seemingly have no connection and how all of these deaths are occurring worldwide. We have the chief that is to go on and kind of just be at a point of him not exactly knowing where to go from here, and he himself is to possibly think that he needs to talk to the Ministry of Health or to go on and talk to the commissioner. But either way, they're still wanting to go on and catch whoever Akira is to finally have all of these deaths stop. So the chief goes on and makes his way to, I believe, the commissioner, and eventually this is going on to lead to the chief finding out about a character known as L. L, who has gone on to solve a number of unsolvable cases, and we have a guy named Watari, I believe, that is to go on and be the one person who is to be the vessel between both Chief and both L for right now, as it seems that Watari has this laptop that is to be opening up, that is to have a L insignia, that is to go on and start the rapport between both L and between both Chief. L goes on and is to explain to the chief how he is to go on and graphingly figure out exactly where most of these deaths are occurring, which is within Asia, and to narrow down where the killer could quite possibly be located, as well as also realizing that there is no way possible that this whole thing could be done by uh, a team of 80 people, that really it has to go on and just be one singular person that is having all of these deaths occur by their hands. So we go on and we break all of this down, and then afterwards we go on and we have the chief that is to go on and state how he doesn't exactly agree with working with L, but his hands are just really tied at this point and he has no real other alternative or choice. So he has to go on and work with a guy like L, even though L is going on and working uh, with him in secret, or logically it's like, well, we can't trust a guy that we can't physically see. But if anything, they do it anyways. So the next thing we see is Light going on, and he is Googling and Yahooing, I guess is the real thing here, because Yahoo, I think, is still a thing. And he is looking up Ryuk and trying to figure out who exactly he is. Then Ryuk is to go on and appear, and we consistently have Ryuk be eating apples. So both Light and both Ryuk talk about how it seems with the Death Note being in full swing here, that it seems that there is to be less likely of crimes occurring, and that the future is to go on and be in their hands because they are determined how exactly these murders are to all go on and die. We have Light that goes on and has his cell phone go off, and so we would go on to have Light opening the cell phone, and he would find out through his cell phone as he's getting these kind of notifications when these certain broadcasts are to go on and occur, because it seems that there is specifically a Kira channel that is kind of going on right now. So we would have Light that goes on to make his way to this live report, and we have this guy who goes by the name Lind L. Taylor. We specifically have that name posted on here because this guy is going on to explain that he is to be the guy known as L, and this guy is consistently going on and berating Akira and saying how immature he is and every insult that he can think of in the book, because logically this guy is going on and trying to goat Akira really just on TV to kill him, to really just make a point here. So this guy just continues to go on and just berate uh, Kira here just to see how this is all going to play out. And so Light does go on and gets sucked into it. He does go on and write down the name, and this guy does go on and fall over and get killed here. So we're honestly starting to go on and see that Light is reasonably kind of having the whole moral thing starting to slip a little, and reasonably now Light is starting to kill people, even though we're not exactly sure if they're to be all deserving of that occurring. But once this guy is to keel over dead, we then go on and have Light, who is to interrupt this broadcast and is to go on and state here that since this guy had gone on to fall over dead, they know exactly where this channel had been specifically broadcasted to, and so that ends up having them really easily narrow down exactly where Akira is to go on and be located in, because of this TV being in a very specific city that is to be broadcasted in. So L is like, aha, like now I've gone on and figured out a way to better find you, Kira. And we also have the fact that since this guy is just going by the name L, that logically, like, there is no way for Light to go on and be able uh, to take out specifically L, because he doesn't know his face, and he, of course, only knows his name by L. So we, of course, have Light that is obviously upset at this point because, like, the real L is still alive. Because if anything, L was to have gone on and just had a faceless guy who was going on to death row anyways just kind of present himself as L to see what was to happen here. But also, I think that just kind of shows a lot about just Light in general, with logically him going on and just seeing this guy that is insulting him so easily and just wanting him to just be killed because of that. Anyways, moving on here. So we have at certain points where we would have the chief that is to go on and kind of feel insulted by what L is doing. And consistently, Chief is going on and telling L, "This isn't a game. This isn't a game." He consistently tells him that. But it seems that L is also going on and getting results. So we go on to have both L and both Light, who are kind of bickering amongst themselves via just a TV screen. And we have Ryuk that's going on of like, man, like, uh, humans are fun. Like, I can't wait to see who wins between the two of you. So we have the chief that is being formed by one of his inspectors that the fake L had actually gone on and got killed during that broadcast, and that if anything, L is getting his hands a lot more dirty and almost being just the same as Kira, and really, yeah, but like L is just, it's like we still have to go on and realize that L is still getting some kind of results compared to the chief here. Um, but again, things are to just kind of be lost regardless. So now the news is going on and saying L versus Kira. Uh, uh, conflict killed on air, or convict killed on air. So they're going on and they're having a newspaper that showcases the death of this convict. So we have Light and Shishori that is making their way to Light's room, and we have Light's sister that is going on and being the person that's sending Shuri to Light's room, and like it seems that Light's sister is just kind of very nosy, and Light ends up telling his sister, I believe her name is um, Seda, that it's like, well, hey, mind your business. So Shuri and Light make their way into his room, and while eventually the two of them start to talk here, we have them get interrupted by Ryuk, and Light turns to Ryuk and starts talking, and Shishori's like, well, what did you say? And Light is like, oh, nothing. If anything, we should probably go outside. The two of them make their way to this art gallery, and the two of them go on to find that there is a couple there that is kissing. Shishori and Light make a joke here. It's like, well, hey, shouldn't that be something we should be doing? And Light is to go on and point at the cameras, and it seems that Light probably doesn't exactly enjoy public displays of attention. We have Ryuk that turns to Light and ends up asking him, as Shishuri is to walk away here, what is to go on and happen if Shishuri is to figure out that you're Akira? And Light ends up stating that there's a possibility that he hopes that Shishuri will understand that he's Akira someday. And eventually that might lead to the end of this film. So, we're now back with the chief. So, Light is to go on and map out every single one of the deaths that are to go on and occur, which are to assumed to have all been connected to Kira. And they would all be very, like, for day to day, very timed out. And so eventually, they would find through all of this bit of information of all these deaths that occur at these very specific times, how eventually there is a certain block of time that does not go on and end up having any occurrence of death happening. And so one of the inspectors go on to realize, oh my god, whoever this killer is has to go on and have some kind of college um, classes, and that's the reason why none of the deaths actually occur, is because this person's too busy being a college student to kill people. So they start to narrow it down even much more so to figure out who the killer could quite possibly be. So we have Light going on and talking to his sister and his mother, and they're starting to talk about Light and Shishuri. It's like, oh, the two of you. Like, it seems like things between you are becoming very promising, and eventually Light is to go on and interrupt these two kind of butting in on his love life because his father is coming home. Here is to go on and be the big reveal that the chief is to actually be Light's father. And it's like, like that could be all the more reason to understand why exactly Light is to be able to kind of get into the criminal database, as well as also really very much go on and figure out a easy way for him to be able to give suspicion away from himself, uh, and explain how eventually Light goes on and is to strategically figure out a way to best these people, because he is to go on and just put these things in place where he can just strategically continue to beat these people. Like, the one thing that really catches my mind of just, man, this was brilliant, is we would have at one point where Light goes on and puts this specific little instrument within his door handle. And he would then come to find out when he makes his way home that someone had gone into his room. So that's how Light was to go on and figure out how his room was to have gone on and been bugged and surveillance the way it was. And I thought that that part of the movie was brilliant. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Mel Gibson movie Conspiracy Theory with Julia Roberts. How Mel Gibson would go on and put this beer bottle on his door handle, and if he was to go on and think that anybody was going to try to come in on him, that beer bottle would fall over, and then Mel would realize that somebody is coming for him. But what would have happened if that beer bottle would have just gone on and just fell by accident? Then Mel would just have suspicions of no one. Uh, but anyways, I guess still, if the beer bottle was to fall over, then logically Mel's character would, of course, go on uh, and still at least be more cautious than anything. But moving on here. So the chief makes his way back home and sits at the table, rejoining the rest of his family. And Light goes on and is talking to his dad. It's like, well, like I know that you're very exhausted. You've been working very hard lately. And Light goes on and starts talking to the chief about the Akira case, and starts saying how the chief, it probably seems like he'll have a lot on his mind, and that Light is going on and saying like, well, hey, like, um, maybe there's a possibility I can help you with this case, maybe help you figure some things out. And the chief is going on and telling Light, it's like, well, hey, like, don't go on and try to think that you will go on and have anything to do uh, with what I'm working on today. If anything, like you have a future in law enforcement, and it's 5 to 10 years somewhere down the road. And so Light goes on and says, like, well, okay then, like, well, if anything, like, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna go back in my room and study for 10 years from now. And so Light goes back into his room and makes his way onto his computer. So, oh, also, uh, we would have uh, Light that goes on and tells his father, it's like, well, hey, Dad, if anything was to ever go on and happen to you, like, uh, I would definitely want to go on and be the one um, to get to Kira for what had happened to you. Like, really going on and really setting up uh, to Light saying to the chief that it's like, well, hey, definitely don't go on and think that I'm Akira, because I'm going to go on and throw this little statement here that is going to kind of leave suspicion off of me. So very smart, very creative here. So if anything, Light goes on and makes his way to his computer and goes into the police database. Here is where Light goes on and figures out what the investigation has figured out, which would of course have the whole thing about the certain times that Light is within college hours and people are dying. So shortly thereafter, Light, when he figures that out, the next thing we start to see is how the deaths are happening way more sporadically. And once the chief and all the people are to be very confused about why all the deaths are happening more unusually now and all scatterbrained, we would go on to have L, who's talking to the chief and saying, like, well, yeah, like, I guess that the killer had gone on to figure this out. That's why things are to go on and be more unusual. And that's when they are to go on and realize that this killer has the ability to also manipulate time and have some way of getting to these people whenever instead of a certain block of time. So here is where we go on uh, to also. I think this is where. No, 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 no. This is not quite yet happening. I thought this was going to go on and be the point where finally the chief is to go on and tell L that they finally need to go on and meet in person, but that doesn't quite happen yet. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So we have Light and we have Ryuk that are just walking along um, the streets one day, and we have Light that is going on and tossing an apple in the air, and it drops onto the ground, and Ryuk is not eating it. So Light is going on and asking Ryuk, hey, like, are you sick of apples? And Ryuk is saying, no, I can't go on and pick that up because there's obviously someone following us. So Light goes on and takes a camera photo and sees the guy following them, and it seems like he's been followed for days now. So Light wants to go on and try to figure out who exactly this guy who is following him is, and eventually, also at one point, uh, Ryuk can possibly have the answer for Light, but it will cost him some of his years of his life off of him. So Light will not go on and give in to that kind of ultimatum. And eventually he will try to figure out who exactly Ray is, who is this FBI agent, and there'll be a masterful crafting way to get that answer, and we'll get to that part of that story. So, Ryuk also, the interesting thing here is to go on and see how exactly long Light has to live, which is kind of really interesting. Plus, also when really looking at this here of the screen of the name and the time and whichever, this also kind of reminds me of the Michael J. Fox movie, The Frighteners, where the people would go on and have these certain things carved into their forehead to explain that they're going to be the next to be killed. And we would have at certain point where Michael J. Fox is to be the only one that sees these number markers on these people's foreheads, and is to not be quite sure exactly why they are to exist. But then eventually we will find that they are going to be the next victim for this certain ghost killer to take out, and just kind of makes for an interesting movie of the Frighteners. So we then go back to the notebook and says how to use. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should be written within the next uh, 6 minutes uh, and 40 seconds. So yeah, so I guess that honestly doesn't kind of make any sense. Wait a minute, let me reread this. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should. Oh, okay. So if you were to go on and say like, okay, this person is to die by gunshot. If you go on and just leave it at that, like now you have only 6 minutes and 40 minutes if you want to go on and put even more details. If you don't go on and you don't do that, then this person is probably going to randomly find a gun somehow, some means, and do themselves in their own very specific way. That is to be within their own uh, way of doing things. But if you specifically want a person to die in a very elaborate and very certain way that'll go on and benefit you greatly, because maybe you want to know the combination of the safe before they die, then that will go on and play out into the details of you needing to take those 6 minutes and 40 seconds to go on and be able to put down that information. But anyways, and that'll kind of play out to what goes on in the certain portion of this story. So within the following deaths that are to occur with Light killing people, we would come to find that Light is starting to experiment to the point of he would come to find through the victims that he can even write certain messages to L, uh, And that is to go on and be rather interesting to see that all play out. And for even the chief and L to go on and also figure this out also. That it seems that this guy is experimenting, and that it seems that there's a reason that this guy is going on and doing what he is doing. And also, Light is seeing this information also, and Light is going on and realizing that the experiments that he's going on and doing will eventually show fruit. And then he's like, okay, so now I can go on and really control how exactly people die and how exactly I want them uh, to be able to do said task. So we go on and we have somebody that is to be on the run, and it's to be a guy, because this is on the news. This is to be a guy named uh, Kichiro Osorida. Um, I believe is possibly his name. I'm butchering that, but anyways. Um, Kichiro will go on and be a person that eventually will make his way into Light's life. So he'll go on and have to remember how to try to figure out a way to pronounce this person's name. So we would go on to have Light, who is to write in Kichiro's name, but eventually there's going to be a lot of details that are to go on and be kind of close to the vest up until a point where they reveal it within the movie. So the following day, we go on and have both Light and Shishuri um, that make their way on to a bus stop. Shishuri goes on and tells Light, hey, this is kind of an interesting change of pace. Instead of us having to go on and just kind of walk like we're going on and we're on a bus ride. So we would go on to have Ray, the guy that is following Light, go on to this same bus also and sit right behind him. And so finally, Light is to go on and confront his follower and say that he has been following him and asking why exactly he has gone on to do so. And Ray is going on and saying, like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, kid. So here's where we go on and we have the guy who is to be known as Hishiro, who is to go on and have a beanie and a coat and makes his way onto the bus, is to be thrusting a gun into the bus rider's hand, or bus rider's face, and is to state that this bus is his. Uh, so Ichiro is to go on and be holding this bus and telling them where exactly to go, and wants the bus rider to go on and uh, and call onto his radio to explain that he's holding these people hostage for 100 million data, 100 million yen. So we have Light that goes on and is to give a message to Ray via this piece of paper. And so Light goes on and holds this message to Ray saying, like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and I'm going to try to stop this guy. And so I'll give you a chance to grab him once I'm kind of distracting him. And Ray is like, hey, don't take the chance. It's too risky. So we have Light that's turning to Ray. It's like, well, how would you know? How can I trust you? And so Ray goes on and explains that he's an FBI agent and goes on to give Light his ID, and so now Light ends up knowing exactly who Ray's first and last name is, so he knows who he is. So Hichiro goes on to make his way through the bus as he goes on to notice Light specifically and asking exactly what Light is up to, and that if anything, Light has more nerve than anyone else on this bus. Hichiro goes on and takes the gun to Light's face, and all of a sudden, uh, we have Hichiro that is to go on and end up seeing the god of death. Because at one point, we have Hichiro that is to grab the note away from Light and notice what he is trying to do to try to be a hero. Once going on and having this note in his possession, that is, of course, when Hichiro is to see the demon, or is to see the god. So Hichiro goes on and takes his gun, fires numerous times at this god, and this gun does absolutely nothing but just passes these bullets through this god of death. And so this has absolutely no effect of these bullets for this god of death. Um, Plus, also, he's like, dude, I'm a god. I'm not going to die very easily. So Ichiro ends up going on and freaking out here, telling the bus to stop. He gets off and immediately ends up getting run over by this car. Everybody goes on and gets outside of the bus, and then here is where we start to see, if you guys remember, of course, certain math equations. They would always go on and they would always tell us, show your work. We would finally go on and finally realize that they are going to be doing this right here and now. So Light had gone on and written in that Hichiro had gone on to do every single bit of what he is to go on and do here by getting on this specific bus at this specific time and taking this bus hostage the way he does, and then is to also make his way to Light and eventually go on and see this god and get freaked out the way he does, and then end up getting killed uh, by this vehicle. And reasonably, the reason why Light did all of this was just so that way he can go on and find the identity of Ray. And that's all that he really wanted to do, was just to find the identity of the Ray. Killing this guy meant nothing to him, but to just finally get the reveal of this Ray guy and who he really is, so we can go after him later on. So we have Shishuri that has gone on and taken this whole stressful situation and is to really be very ill or very sick or whichever. And so Light is going on and taking Shishuri and taking her to a cab, I think, to go to the hospital so she can get some IVs in her or something of that nature to go on and get her kind of levels back to normal. And before Light and Shishuri leave, Ray is to go on and say to Light, it's like, well, hey, if you have any questions, come to me. Or no, wait. Light goes on and says, like, well, hey, like, since now that we know one another, like, if you have any questions that you want to go and ask me, just ask me directly. It's like, just don't go on and just continue to follow me. It's like, if you have any suspicions of me, how about we clear this up now? So like, let's not run or hide anymore. Let's really just go on and just, like, if you want to go on and you want to ask me, just ask me. So Light goes on and is with Shishuri, and they're talking about the bus hijacker and that he's dead now. And Light is to go on and mention to Shishuri how he talked to the police about what he had saw, and that if anything, Shishuri should lie down and rest. we have Shishuri that goes on and tells Light, it's like, well, hey, like you were trying to be a hero, and don't go on and do anything like that ever again. I don't know what. Shishuri states that she doesn't know what she would do if she had ever gone on to lose Light, and like kind of the very like, of course we have always the like, well, hey, if someone's going to try to be a hero, we have the woman next to him is like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, like what would have ever happened to you if you would have died. So we now have Ray that makes his way home to Naomi. So it seems that both Ray and Naomi's relationship are going on to be very flourishing and very promising. It seems that the two of them are going to be married soon. And as Ray makes his way back home to Naomi, Naomi is like, well, hey, what's the matter? And Ray is to fluff it off as nothing because he can't really go on and go into much details about his day to day. But anyways, uh, we would go on to again showcase that Light knows exactly who Ray is. Ray is to go on and I believe make his way into reading the Bible. And we would go on to have Naomi, who is quoting out verses to him of the Bible. And Ray is to go on and say that, yeah, this is one of the passages of the Bible. So they're going and talking about how they're making future plans to go to the church to meet with the priest on Saturday. And that also, Naomi is telling Ray to be careful, specifically when dealing with um, his case that he's involved in right now with Kira, possibly. And that in the past, both Ray and both Naomi had been involved in L cases in the past, and like Naomi just says that L has worked with Ray before, but then eventually L will go on and tell us that so has Naomi. And so the two of them are actually to have been agents that have fell for one another. So here is where we go on and have, I believe, the chief who is to figure out the whole message thing. And there is also to be a thing about the god of death only eats apples. We have both Ryuk and Light going on and talking about the FBI agents and possibly what they're going to go on and do about that. And Ryuk goes on and tells Light, it's like, well, what if this FBI guy, what if he figures you out? What if he follows you and figures you out that you're Kira? And Light is to go on, it's like, well, then maybe I should go on and maybe I should kill him. And it's like, well, if you go on and specifically kill this one guy, then they're going to figure out specifically that you're Kira. So you need to figure out some way of figuring out how to exactly uh, avoid this follower, but then also avoid kind of giving up your hand. So, and also the fact that now Light is having to make the decision of killing an FBI agent, which is really getting to a much more slipperier slope of like, okay, Light is going on and even killing guys who probably don't even deserve it or people that don't deserve it. And what is he going to do about this? So now we go on and we have Ray and Naomi, and Ray is to go on and tell Naomi that he cannot go on and go to church to see this priest because he had something come up. And Ray is to go on and tell Naomi, it's like, well, hey, I'm sorry I'm busy, but if anything, call off what your plans are, and I'll join you later. So Ray goes on and he makes his way to this subway, and Naomi follows him. Ray goes on and makes his way to this subway and finds this envelope, which he goes on and opens. He goes on to find that there is a note saying, I am Kira, and there is to be a walkie-like thing for him to go on and put a receiver in his ear so he can listen to Kira, and the two of them can have this conversation between one another. So Ray goes on and puts this receiver in and starts talking to Kira. And Kira goes on to state to Ray that he's watching every single thing that he's doing right now, and that also Kira is to have a number of questions of Ray of what information he actually has. And also, Kira, or Light, is to go on and to explain to Ray here that he will confirm how he can see what exactly Ray is going on and doing. Light is going on and having a guy that is sitting next to Ray die right next to him. And this is to go on to be a guy named Ozaki that was to have gone on and was to have been arrested for a crime 2 years ago. And Light had decided to just have this guy die right in front of Ray here to just kind of prove a point that he's like, hey, I'm seeing everything that you're doing. And if anything, if you don't go on and if you don't answer my questions, all the people that are to be uh, within your vicinity are all going to die. So we have Ray that is to go on and realize that, okay, like this guy had a heart attack next to me. I'm going to have to go on and kind of shift his body to make it look like he just fell asleep. And then go on to continue to give in to, of course, Light's demands. So Light is to go on and ask Ray who is to go on and be involved in his case, and who are to be other FBI agents that are to, of course, go on and be watching over certain specific people that are to be tied uh, to the person who are looking after certain people that are to try to have suspicions that they're possibly Kira. So Ray goes on and puts all of these names of all of these FBI agents upon this bit of paper. The first one that he brings up is a guy named Miles. And so further and further, Ray goes and also is to look up this email and finds even more names and is to go on and write them all down. So we then get to the how to use again back here. Even if you do not actually possess the Death Note, the effect will be the same if you can recognize the person and his or her name to place in the blank. It is kind of interesting though, because technically the person who is writing in the Death Note is to not actually be the person who actually has the Death Note. It's another person who is going on and writing these names down. So how is it that the names are all sticking when it's not actually to be the person who actually does have the Death Note? It's just some other person who's writing down the names. It's kind of weird to me how this still will actually go on and work through other people, which is kind of the interesting part of this film. So, as considering Ray is to go on and technically have pages of this Death Note, he goes on and is to see Ryuk, who is outside one of these windows, scaring Ray. And once Ray is to give every bit of this information to Kira, he goes on and leaves said train and then gets a heart attack and dies. Naomi realizes that Ray is now dying, and so Naomi is to go on and thrust her way to Ray to try and see if there's any way that she can go on and help him, but it's too late. Light goes on and is to make his presence known to Ray as he drops his hoodie down. Like, Ray finds out who Kira was. But sadly enough, Ray doesn't go on and say this to Naomi. Hey, Light's the killer! Light's Akira! Or even Ray cannot go on and even tell Naomi that because logically, he may not even know if definitively Light was Kira. Maybe Light was just conveniently also just on the subway. But either way, Light goes on and he takes the yellow envelope, looks at all the names, and then we start to see that all of these FBI agents simultaneously are all getting killed one by one by one. So we then again have to go on and show our work here. They go on and they have us see that specifically Light in the Death Note would go on to state that of course Ray is going to get killed here, but goes on to state how exactly he is to go on and die, how he was to make his way onto this train at 10:40, deliver all of these names to Kira during this time, and then go on and by the time he's to leave this train, die shortly thereafterwards. So here is where the chief goes on and finds out about the deaths of all the FBI agents. And so this is where the chief is to go on and make his way to all of his officers that are working on this case and explain to them that there could be a possibility that their lives could be in jeopardy. So at any point, if anybody wants to go on and bow out of what's going on here, the chief will go on and think nothing less of them because if anything, like their lives could be in jeopardy the further and further they go on into this case, and whether they want to continue to take it on or not is all up to them. So the thing we see shortly thereafter is a number of people all bowing and then leaving the room. A huge number of people. So there is a very small group of individuals that are left within this room. And the chief is like, well, all right, like you're going to be the people that are working on this case. And it's like, all right. So since there is such a small group of people working on this case at this point, here is where we finally go on and we have the chief who honestly does want L to have a physical presence to the rest of this group because of how much they're putting their lives on the line. And L can go on and sympathize with that and just be like, okay, Watari, you go on and take these people to me so they can physically see me and go on and work alongside me. So the group goes on and follows Awate to this hotel location. And so they make their way to L's room, and it's filled with all this junk and chocolate and crap. And we would go on to find that L is to be just a guy with a white long sleeve t shirt and blue jeans and has no shoes on. This guy is to go on and be scratching his legs and be like, well, all right, like I'm L. So, like, you of all people, you're L? Okay. And the chief goes on, and it's a turn to Watari, and Watari is like, yeah, this is the guy. So, everybody is to go on and start introducing themselves, and we have L that goes on and is to be finger gunning and pointing at all these people who are to go on and tell exactly who their all names were. And so L goes on and tells all these people, like, you know what? If I would have gone on and been L, I would have known who all you people were, and you all could have died. So, if anything, L is going on and telling these people that he's like, well, hey, I'm not going to actually tell you who my real name is, but I will give you a default name. So at least you'll have something to call me instead of just L at this point. So here is where they continue to talk about the experimentation that Akira is going through, as well as also the FBI agents that had gone on and all died here. So, um, trying to think where exactly this is. We would go on to have L that is to realize the more and more that these FBI agents are to go on and get killed here, that L is to go on and much more figure out exactly who Akira is to go on and profilingly be. That this guy is to go on and be very immature and hates to lose. So reasonably also L is to probably share that exact same sentiment, and L is turning to the chief to like, well, hey, maybe if we're to finally be face to face, and the two of us could be working together right now, like maybe we can go on and be able to win. So, but again, we have the chief that is to explain to L. It's like, well, this isn't a game; it's an investigation, and L is to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, no different, like whatever, like we're still gonna go on and try our best to beat this thing. So now we have Naomi, and she goes on her own little journey here. So Naomi goes on and finds this bit of letter that is to be talking about this investigation is to be closed, and we would go on uh, to have L that is taking these certain tapes so that way he can look through them to see if he's going to possibly find Kira uh, by going through them. And the tapes are to go on and be from the subway to try and figure out if he can uh, see how exactly Ray had gone on to die. And this will lead also L to see both Ray and Naomi and to figure out what had happened. So Naomi goes on and is to hand this picture to the bus driver and is to ask him about what had happened days before when his bus had been taken hostage by Hichiro and explain the story as best this bus driver can about what had gone on through the bus. So really just to also have Naomi possibly figure out uh, who honestly uh, Ray was following that day. But anyways, so we would then follow this up by Elle spotting Naomi, and we then would go on to have Elle that has a number of photos of possibilities of all of the FBI agents who are following very specific people. And L is to state it's like, well, hey, just for precaution, like all these people who are followed by all these FBI agents, we're gonna go on and have them all to be uh, having cameras on them, and their places are to be bugged. One of the pictures ends up revealing that it's actually Light, and the chief is to go on and realize, like, well, hey, like, so you're gonna go on and you're gonna surveillance like my own family. And Ella's like, well, yeah, like, if anything, we can't show favorites here, and, like, we have to go on and have everybody under suspicion. So, we, of course, go on and have the chief going on and saying, it's, well, hey, if anybody finds out that we ever did this, we could all be fired. Uh, but if anything, this is a risk that we're going to have to take. So, we have Naomi that is to go on and find uh, Shishori and go on and ask her about Ray, and then Shishori will go on and explain to to Naomi how she, of course, was with Light, and Light had figured out that Ray was following him. And I think the reason why Naomi would specifically find Shishori is because Shishori had gone to the hospital, and maybe the nurses had gone on to figure out who Shishori was and explain who Shishori was, and that's how Naomi had probably gone on to find Shishori the way she did. That's the only thing that convinces me how Naomi could find Shishori so easily. Uh, but anyways, Naomi goes on and tells Shishori that that the guy that was following Light had been killed by Kira, and that since now Naomi knows that the guy that Ray was following was Light, Naomi is going to, of course, obviously have suspicions that Light is to possibly be Kira. So now we have Light that is going on, and he is ahead of time, writing down certain names to go on and have them all be killed a week ahead of time. And he's planning out exactly what times they die and everything like that, just to be very ahead of the game. And we go on to have uh Light do that because he's like, well, hey, with how dangerous everything is starting to become, or if anything is to go on and happen to me, at least these names will be in the death note, and these people will still go on and die without me actually being here to take them all out. And we kind of can play that into convenience because, in all honesty, we would realize that Light will be under surveillance for about a week's time. So, but if anything, Ryuk is to praise Light for the fact that he's like, man, you think of everything. And we have Light that is going on and watching some cooking show with a girl named Misa. I believe her name is Misa. And she's going on and she's going in depth about all of this cooking and and these recipes of this pudding and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, who gives a about this cooking thing? Why is this important? But then we, of course, go on afterwards of Misa, who's going on and doing this interview. And I'm like, okay, what does this all matter? And we would come to find that there is going to be a guy who is really watching over Mitsa, who is going to go by the name Ryu Taruo. I believe is his name. I'm butchering that, but it's to be a guy who is to go on and kind of have either like a buzz cut or is to be kind of bald, and he has to have facial hair, and eventually we'll come to find that this guy is seemingly following Mitsa because he is to go on and either be this obsessed fan or be this guy that is to go on and eventually um, want to not only kill Misa, but then is to be like, well, hey, we'll die together, like the two of us. Um, and eventually, by the end of the movie, we end up coming to find that this guy is to have a knife to Misa, and he ends up dying uh, before going after Mitsa, and then all of a sudden the Death Note notebook flops in front of her. To where we have to either assess that there's just another notebook that is to fall out of the sky, or reasonably, uh, we would go on to finally have at some point where Light is to give up his Death Note to give it to another person. But I think really it's to go on to be the first case of there just being another Death Note that is to come into someone else's hands. That makes more sense in my brain noggin. Because why would Light just give that up so easily when he is to go on and be the person who is to completely be void of all suspicion by the end of this film? And I'll go on and eventually explain that at some point by the end of this film. Anyways, now that I've gone on to explain all of this shit, let's go on and let's get back into Light. So here is where Light goes on and meets up with Shishuri and Naomi. So now Naomi and Light are face to face. We would go on to have Naomi, who is to make up some name to tell Light, and Naomi goes on to tell Light, hey, yeah, like, I am to be the fiance of Ray, but I'm not really going to give you my name, so that way you won't go on and be Kira and try to kill me. But eventually we'll find out that that's going to be a waste of time, because actually Light will go on and figure out what exactly Light's, or Light will go on and figure out exactly who Naomi actually is, as he'll go on and find out that it is public knowledge, because Naomi is to have gone on and to be going and soon to be getting married to Ray. So all Light needs to go on and do and is to find the specific priest that Naomi had talked to, and then find out the information of who Naomi actually is through that guy, and figure out the name via doing that. So kind of becomes a new mood point for Naomi to go under some alias or not to give up her name, because Light will eventually figure it out. So we have Light the further and further that both him and Naomi are talking, how Naomi is accusing Light of being Akira, and Light is writing everything down because it's like, well, hey, I may go on and sue you for putting me down the way you are. And so Naomi goes on and explains about Ray dying and that a number of the other FBI agents had died also. And because of Ray getting killed later than all the other FBI agents, that's how Naomi would go on to figure out that Akira had gone on to be Light. That is the only Ray that Naomi had gone on to realize uh, that Light had to have been the one. So after Naomi leaves, the last thing she goes on and tells Light, it's like, well, hey, I gave you a false name, and like, if anything, you can't go on and write me down and try to kill me either. And then Naomi walks away. Shishori goes on and says that Naomi is crazy, and Light goes on and says, false name, huh? Yeah, she's really smart. So, Light and Ryuk uh, are just kind of walking around, and we go on to have, of course, Ryuk is like, well, yeah, yet another FBI agent is after you, and you're in some deep now. So Light goes on and makes his way to his room, and this is where he checks his door to realize that it's been opened while he was away. So Light figures out that his room is being surveillanced, and we have Ryuk that is to kind of pop his head because he can kind of phase through things and see that, yeah, Light's room is being tampered with and is being bugged. So we have Light that is to go on and be going through his day, and L is to be on these cameras just monetizing and looking after everybody. So we have Light that is just sitting at his desk, and Ryuk is starting to get upset because, like, well, hey, why don't you give me an apple? Why aren't you giving me an apple? And Light does not go on and say anything, and he gets off of his desk and he makes his way outside. So Ryuk ends up asking Light, hey, what's wrong? And Light turns to Ryuk and saying, hey, I'm being watched. There's obviously somebody who put cameras and hidden things into my room, and uh, L is completely on to me, so I can't go on and give you an apple right now. But if anything, as they are to make their way into this grocery store, we then go on and have Light that tosses an apple to, of course, Ryuk, and he eats it. So Light is to go on and say to Ryuk here that there has to be uh, some blind spots with these cameras, so that way Light can still go on and do what he wants to do without Light knowing, or L knowing otherwise. So we have at a point here where Light is going on and he is kind of doing his homework, kind of doing his day to day stuff, and people are still going on and dying, but eventually L would go on and state to police officers, well, there hasn't been really a fresh kill that has been happening lately. So really that is to be all the more reason of us trying to go on and realize that we can't figure out if any of these people are to go on and actually at all be Kira or not, because uh, it seems that there hasn't been really a fresh kill that has been going on in the news lately. We also have one point where Elle is going on and passing a, shish kebab like thing, like food on a stick, to the chief. The chief goes on and hands it to some other inspector, and it's like, whatever. So 3 days have passed, and here's where we start to see that the chief is very worn down, and that his blazer is to now just kind of be over his shoulders because he's exhausted. And the chief finally goes on and tells Elle that he's finally taking a break. And all the inspectors are going on and telling the chief as he's lighting a smoke, "Hey man, you really need to rest. Like you haven't slept for 3 days." And the chief goes on to explain to the inspectors, like, "Well, yeah, like if your family was going on and being watched over, you probably wouldn't be able to sleep either." So here is where we go on to have Light that is eating a meal with his sister and mother. And after the meal, he goes on to grab these bags of chips. He goes on to make his way to his room, opens up these bag of chips, and starts eating them. We have Light that is going on and noticing that there is a news report about this certain guy named Toru. And Ella's like, all right, this could be a thing that Kira will want to go on and take this guy out. So Ella's going on and looking at all the camera feeds and is looking specifically at Light and just being like, well, like it seems that specifically Light is having no really attention span to look into what's going on the news. So we would go on to then find that uh, that the kill is to go on and strike, and yet another person is to die by a sudden heart attack. And that is, of course, where we would go on and have Elle realize, oh my god, like, I guess absolutely none of these people through these camera feeds are to have been the one to have gone on to uh, to have killed this specific person, because we've been watching these people for a number of days now, and none of them would show signs that they are to go on and be the Kira person. So we would come to find that what Light had gone on to do, and he ended up having the death note within this bag of chips, as well as also this TV feed, so he can write down this name of this killer while grabbing these chips, and just kind of continuing to just kind of slowly but surely write this name down, so that way he can go on and kind of get away with this without the police knowing, because this is a blind spot. So we have the chief turning to Elle. It's like, well, hey, are you satisfied now? And Elle goes on to state, it's like, well, yeah, I guess we have to recover all of the bugs throughout all of the houses to realize that, like, that this was a waste of our time to look into all these people, because we have to draw the conclusion now that none of them could have been Kira. So they have to go back to the drawing board and figure out who they can assume is to go on and be uh, uh, Kira at this point. So Ryu goes through the house and is to realize all the cameras and all the bugs are gone. So that is, of course, when a Light can freely go on and toss an apple to Ryuk, because they now have freedom. So Light is to go on and be grabbing the bag of chips, and so we would go on to, of course, have uh, Ryuk go on and say to Light, it's like, well, hey, how is it exactly you were kind of get away with having this stuff in this bag of chips the way you did without anybody else grabbing the same bag of chips and eating them. And Light goes on and says, like, well, hey, I'm the only one in the family that ever go on and eat these very specific chips because no one else likes them. So I knew that I would have this one bag that would give me a way of being able to hide this camera feed thing, and I'd get away with it. So very smart, very clever, of course, on Light's hands here. So uh, the next thing we would go on to see here is Elle is getting a call via Naomi, and Naomi is telling Elle that she is going to go on and prove that Light is to be Akira, and she's going to risk her own life to do so. So we have Light that is going on and calling Shishuri and ask if they could meet together at an art gallery. And Light is going, I'm like, okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes. So the phone call is to be hung up, and Naomi is with Shuri, like, aha, like, all right, so we know where we're going to go on and we're going to pull this all off. So Light is to go on and have monitors by the art gallery to see what exactly is going on there. So Light is to go on and call Shishuri that he's at the entrance, and that for him to come inside, and that he is specifically at this mask and death certain painting for, if anything, to kind of triangulate exactly where they're to go on and logically to meet up at. So we go on and we're having Elle that is saying to the chief that it's like, well, hey, Light is still a suspect of Elle, and we of course would have the chief that turns to Elle. It's like, well, hey, hasn't my son already been ruled out as a suspect? And Alice to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, Naomi is going on and being a part of this case, and she has such a much belief of this that she's willing to put her life at risk. So we'll see how this all plays out and see if it's worth it to see if this is to pan out the way we're to want it to pan out to be. So we have Light that goes on and meets up with Shishuri, and Naomi is grabbing onto Shishuri, and eventually what goes on to happen is Naomi ends up putting a gun to Shishuri, and we have Light that is going on and telling Naomi here, it's like, hey, this is between you and me. If anything, kill me instead. We have Light that is trying to convince Naomi that he's not Kira, and that also Shishuri has nothing to do with this. So we consistently have this back and forth of Light trying to convince Naomi that he's not Kira, and we have Naomi that says to Kira here, it's like, well, hey, here's how I'm going to prove how you are Akira, and I'm finally going to go on and give you my full name here, and once you know it, then you're going to go on and be able to kill me somehow. So Naomi goes on and gives Light her full name, and so now Light is to know Naomi's full name here. And so Naomi tells Light, it's like, hey, since you know my full name now, kill me and go ahead. So we have the chief that's like, well, hey, shouldn't we go on and should we like get involved in this art gallery? Like, should we go on and give her some kind of backup or at least like set up a perimeter or something? Like, shouldn't we do something about this? And Ella's like, oh no, like we're missing the good part here. And the chief's like, the good part, like so we have Naomi that's telling like, hey, yeah, kill me like you killed Ray. Uh, like all the criminals you've executed. Go on, uh, kill without laying a hand on me. And again, we have, I'm not Kira. But so we have Light that goes on and is to take out his pen. And as he is to go on and start thumbing it through his fingers, we then would go on and eventually have Shishori that gets away from Naomi and starts running. And eventually, Naomi is to shoot Shishori. And then, after that happens, Light runs to Shishori and is trying to put pressure on her wounds, trying to get her not to bleed out here. And the chief is to be watching on the television of what is transpiring here and is to be upset, as well as L going on and watching this whole thing just play out. So Shishori falls to the ground and Light is to be upset. Please, no, this can't be happening. And so now we have all the officers and everybody starting to act. They end up setting up a perimeter. They're saying that she's armed, yada, yada, yada. So shortly thereafter that, we have Shishori and Light. They're having this moment. Uh, Light is telling Shishori to hang in there. Uh, the two of them finally kiss, and Shishori had said, yeah, we finally kissed in public. This is our last kiss. And then she dies. We have Light then ends up shouting out to Naomi, why did you shoot her? And eventually Naomi is to follow up with a bullet into her own brain and kill her own self. We then go on and we again have to show our work here. We go back to Light going on and figuring out who exactly Naomi is because of her recent uh, attempts of wanting to marry Ray, having Light go on and exactly figure out that Naomi is going to get married to Ray fairly recently, and Light had already gone on to figure out Naomi's name fairly earlier than by the end of this story, and already know how to go on and kill Naomi here. But we also did not go on and realize how Shishori and her death also plays into this. So, in Light's bit of writing of how Naomi is to go on and die, it ends up leading her to go on and end up with Shishori, and eventually we also go on to find out that uh, that Light himself had written in Shishori to die also, and exactly how she was to go on and die as well, to the point of, since Shishori now dying, this is going to definitively lead to Light being completely absolved of any suspicion of him ever being Akira whatsoever, because of the woman he loved had died. And that is to be the stroke of freaking genius, but then also is to be a very vicious way of having collateral damage in this situation to finally get to there to be absolutely no suspicion of Light whatsoever to the police. And by the end of this, we go on, we have the chief who makes his way to Light and it's like, well, hey, I'll call a cab for you. And and like, I'm sorry that this all kind of happened, and so on and so forth. So we also go on to have Ryuk that is talking to Light, and then Light goes on to explain how he had personally gone on and killed Shishori himself, writing her into the Death Note and explaining everything that I've already gone on to already explain here. So we have Light that goes on to say that, man, like, by writing these things into these notebooks, like, he has really gone on to control people's destinies, and that more than likely it was not to all go on and end up just being such an easy coincidence, that all of this was to really go on and be meant to be here. And so we would, of course, go on and have Ryuk, that is to say, that uh, Light is to go on and be somewhat of a devil, but what he has gone on and done here. And Light is to say, it's like, well, hey, it was like a necessary evil, so he can go on and eventually, if he was to ever gone on and ask if he could join this task force going after Akira, no one would ever go on and doubt him. And Ryuk goes on and says, man, like, you're worse than the god of death. If anything, Ryuk ends up asking Light, it's like, well, do you think that Shishuri, do you think that she really did love you? And or if Light loved her at all, and Light is to go on and say, I don't know. And so the next thing we end up seeing here is Missouri running away from her attacker. He ends up being killed. The notebook ends up falling. And really, after that, we go on to have Light turning to the chief and asking if he can be a part of the task force. And that, considering Shishuri has now been dead, that Light wants to be the one to go after Kira, and that Light will never forgive Kira for what he had gone on to do here today. And we of course have L coming out of the shadows and like, well, yeah, we'll definitely welcome you. And the chief goes on and makes his way to L and saying like, well, yeah, if anything, uh, you need to apologize to my son first. And then that's how they kind of end this movie, with the two of them looking at one another, realizing that there's going to be some conversation to be had between the two of them. But I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Yeah. In a very hodgepodging way, had gone on to try to best explain this movie as best as I could. But also, when realizing that there's a lot of explanation to go into this film, and also, yeah, this movie is to go on and really have a lot of certain specific details that are obviously to take it way, I guess, over the actual recording time of this movie. But regardless, at least I accomplished this goal of reviewing this movie and having a video to be put out this day. So I'm going to go out of my way to get that out of here so I can go on and accomplish other tasks for my day, because obviously I was going on and actually having a workout day instead of actually going on and doing reviews. But I'm trying as best as possible to try to put more reviews out there. Hopefully, if I can go on and swing it, maybe after doing all the stuff that I probably plan on doing today, maybe I can rush into getting at least another movie watched, but probably maybe not reviewed for this day. Because for how things are to seemingly pan out lately, I'm to try to make plans to do something extra, and then that completely falls through. Even if there is certain things where I kind of get it done quicker or whatever, it like I just have that gets just in my way, or I go on and I take way too much time to do certain tasks, and it just kind of takes away from me trying to figure out if I can go on and put out another review for day. So I'm going to try as best as I can to try to squeak something else out, but without a doubt, that probably will just end up just being this. With that, I'm just trying. I really am. But if anything, I don't think that I'm really doing good enough at what I'm really putting out as far as the channel is concerned. And I think it's really just affecting the channel um, by the lack thereof of me going on and putting out less quality bits of content. But otherwise, I'm just I'm trying to do the best I can here and hope for the best. So hopefully, at some point, I will go on and put my best foot forward of pieces for future bit of content. But anyways, goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody.